Hello, everyone, and welcome to the December edition of Logic Apps Live, where we show you new and upcoming features, show you some cool demos, and towards the end, answer your questions live here on YouTube. But before we get started, I figure we'll do a round of quick introduction because we do have some new faces here with me on the call. I'm Derek Lee. I'm a program manager on Logic Apps. And why don't we start with you, Henry?
Sure, thanks, Derek. So my name is Henry, and I am a software engineer on Logic Apps. I graduated from Cornell University earlier this year, and I've been on Logic Apps for about just over 5 months now.
Cool. Thanks, Henry. And John.
Yeah, hey everybody. Thanks for joining us. You probably know who I am. I'm John, and I am the PM manager for the Logic Apps team.
Cool. We also have Divya.
Hello everyone, this is Divya here, and I'm also PM on Logic Apps team.
All right, cool. So let's get started, and we will talk about what's new in Logic Apps. John, go ahead.
Yeah, there's a bunch, right? So let's work down the list. So first up, and this is one of the long-term asks for Logic Apps, and it's great to get to this and release it this week, is breakpoint debugging. This is the ability to now be able to set a breakpoint in your Logic app and then run it, F5 it VS Code and break on that point, that action that you put the breakpoint on, and then inspect even the variables that are in scope and see what's going on. The next thing, I'm just going to run through this super quickly because we're just going to get into demos and actually show you this stuff, which is going to be much more interesting than hearing me talk about it. The next thing is a new layout engine. Now, we talked about this before, that this was coming. Obviously, you've seen the new kind of look and feel that we shipped in the preview back at Ignite a couple of months ago. But the new layout engine now gives the capabilities to render much more sophisticated workflows than we've been able to do previously. So some of the kind of crazy forking and joining parallelization patterns and other things that some of you have created now render beautifully in the new designer. So we're kind of encouraging you to see what crazy kind of shapes of Logic Apps you can now create with the new designer, and let us know what you think. The next one is a new way of building connectors. So we have the capability in the kind of the current G8 version of Logic Apps to be able to create Swagger-based OpenAPI connectors. In the new runtime, we've actually given you the ability to build connectors in code. So a new way of extensibility in the engine itself. So you can build connectors just like we build connectors. With code in them, building them in Visual Studio or VS Code, create the connectors against the framework that we provide you, and have those doing whatever you want them to do without being limited to just kind of HTTP-based specification against OpenAPI. You can kind of run against your own frameworks to connect to your own applications. Pretty powerful stuff. The final one is maybe one of the longest term asks I think we've had, which we're addressing, is building in mapping. So XML 1.0 and Liquid actions into the runtime gives you the ability to now do mappings with both Liquid and XML using XSLT into the engine itself without needing an integration account to do that. And the final one on this slide, at least, is cross-platform support. So, for those of you who are not Windows developers, that's totally okay. We're now giving you support for Mac as well as Linux. So you can choose your development environment, run VS Code in any of these platforms, and be supported in this preview refresh, just like you would be if you're running Windows. Okay, but we're not done there. We've got another slide of new stuff as well. This has been a big release this week. So App Insights, we're providing support for application maps. Really looking forward to seeing this one myself when Divya demos this. But if you're familiar with the concept of application insights as a way of kind of piping telemetry data, the actual trace data out of the services that we have and even your own apps. And the idea of an application map, kind of connecting all of that together and correlating it, that's what we're providing support for now in Logic Apps. So you can see kind of stuff, the data actually flowing through Logic Apps through the endpoints. And then webhook support, we're bringing this into the engine as well now. to give you local web support to be able to set this up and set up call redirects on your local machine as well. That'll make more sense when you see it. And then a new invoke functions action in the preview that wasn't there on the initial drop a couple. And you can now invoke functions super easily in a function app that you've created. And then finally, there's a bunch of various designer improvements on top of what I was just talking about with the new layout engine. So why don't we take a look at some of this?
Perfect. Thanks, John. And Henry, why don't you go ahead and share your screen, and we can take a look at the demo for remote debugging.
Sure. Thanks, Derek. So here I have a logic app with you can see it starts with a simple HTTP request trigger. And then we have a initialized variable action. Here is just an array of 3 items, Henry, Derek, and John. And after that, we have a for each action that loops over each of those 3 names. And for each of those 3 names, we have a compose action. So this is right here is just a constant string, my name is. And after the compose, we use a HTTP action to send a post request to some endpoint. This right here is just a logic apps endpoint. And the body of this HTTP action is outputs, which is just the output from the compose action, and then the current item, which will be one of our 3 names. So if you don't know, the for each action executes its contents in parallel. So it might be beneficial if you wanted to debug this to see exactly the order in which it runs. And you can do that now by setting breakpoints in the workflow.json file. Right now, we support 2 breakpoint locations for each action. One is at the beginning of the action. You can set a breakpoint on the line with the action name. And then if you wanted to break on the end of the action, you can set a breakpoint on the closing brace of this action. For example, for this for each here, I have a breakpoint in the beginning and the end. And then if we wanted to take a look at the details, we can set a breakpoint in the beginning and end of this compose action. And then also one more time in the beginning and end of this HTTP action. All right, so let me press F5 to start this workflow. So this debugging functionality only works in the latest VS Code extension, and that is 0.0.7. So if you want to play around with the things you're seeing, you can upgrade to this version, and you should be able to start setting breakpoints in JSON files. All right, let me kill this function app. Sorry, kill this workflow run, and I will press F5 one more time. And here, let me re-enable the breakpoints. This one here is for the for each loop, and then I'll set a breakpoint at the beginning and end of the compose action, and then also at the beginning and the end of the HTTP action. All right, looks like the runtime is starting up again. Great. I will hit this endpoint one more time through Postman. And you can see we've broken at the beginning of the for each loop. Here we can see the action inputs is the variable we're putting in, and when we click continue, it has broken at the beginning of the compose action. And the action input here is my name is. Since this is a constant string, it's not too interesting. So let's just verify the action output. Yep, it's just my name is, and let's disable these 2 breakpoints. Okay, continuing on, we hit the HTTP action beginning breakpoint, and we see repetition indexes here, and this is the index of the current for each loop. Here we are at iteration 1, and the item we're currently iterating over is the name Derek. For the action inputs, we can see that we're doing a post request, and the URL is displayed here, followed by the body of the action. All right, if you continue one more time, you can see that the iteration has changed to 2, the value has changed to John, And continue one more time changes the iteration to 0, the value to Henry. And because this is the for each loop happens in parallel, the order for which you loop over the variables is not always incrementing. All right, if I click continue one more time, we stop at the end of the HTTP action. You can see that we're on iteration 2 for the value John, and the action result has a bunch of really helpful debugging information such as start time, end time, and we can look into the outputs. Here we see the results of this action. The response is 200. If we expand this, we can see a bunch of headers. And the response from the logic app is, hello, my name is John. So we click continue one more time. It's changed to, hello, my name is Henry. And the iteration has changed respectively. And lastly, we see, hello, my name is Derek. So using breakpoints like this, you can step through the execution of your logic app in real time. And this can be really useful if you're debugging a large complex logic app, such as something with nested for each loops or with random variables, and you want to see the variables as they execute in real time. Okay, so this is my demo. I hope it was clear and that you guys enjoyed it.
All right, cool. Thanks, Henry, for the demo. And yeah, like Henry said, we hope you like the feature. And give this a try. So let us know how you think about it. Now, what I want to do is to give a quick demo. This is going to be a short one for the new designer layout. Here I'm showing a previous version of the workflow designer. So you should be familiar with this, with the long action, with it having to scroll a lot in order to make sense of what the workflow is doing. Now, with the and here is another example. This is an actual workflow that we use internally here to process some data for our Power BI dashboard. And you can see all the parallel branches are going all over the place. Now with the new layout engine, this is a workflow that I did yesterday just to show what kind of possibilities are there when we talk about this new layout. All right, so you can see that I started from a single trigger and a single action, but I immediately split into multiple parallel branches. Inside the parallel branches, I then create additional ones. And you can see I even branch out to this actual here before joining it back. So again, this workflow previously would not have been able to render using the workflow designer with the layout engine that we had before. But this new engine really enabled us to show you more complex workflows that you are building. And again, it's something that we're seeing from the telemetry, from the usage, and by talking to you, that we know as Logic App adds more features, as your implementation grow more in more maturity, you are building more and more complex workflows that you want us to support you in doing so with the workflow designer. And this is how we are doing it. And this is really just the beginning of that journey. With the new layout engine, now we can show things. We want to make it look even better. So at the end of the streaming session, we'll mention a upcoming user research that we hope you can participate in. So if you're interested, definitely get in touch with us. So your feedback can help us drive the direction of the workflow designer. Now, let's go to the next demo from Divya on XML and Liquid Action. So Divya, why don't you go ahead and share your screen?
Derek, I hope you can hear me and see my screen.
Yeah, we can see it, Divya.
Okay, all right. So I am very excited to talk about and demo this feature, which has been a long outstanding ask from all of you, from various customers we talk to. And what makes it more exciting is the fact that we are providing this capability by decoupling the dependency on the integration account, which is something again we heard loudly from our customers, and we are happy that we are able to deliver on that. So let me go through the experience here. In order to use to do XML transformations or to use liquid actions, you still need the artifacts such as your maps or schemas. But the source of those artifacts is not going to be integration account anymore. So here I'm showing you my VS Code local experience, where as you can see, in the project I have a folder named artifacts, and this is where you would put your artifacts such as schemas or maps. So for this application, I have my maps in maps folder, I have my schemas in schemas folder. This is mainly the difference with respect to how the action behaves. Rest of it is pretty much going to be similar. So here I have a workflow where I'm going to send a request, an XML request, which I'm validating using XML validation action. As you can see, it works the same way. It takes in the content, and when it comes to schema, you have the similar drop down, but the source of the schema here now is your local file system, the files inside the schema folder. Likewise, when I'm doing transform XML action, again the sources of the schema of the maps is your local file system and the folder which is the maps. As you can see, the maps can have different kinds of maps. It can be liquid or XSLT, but here in the drop down, we are going to do the filtering so that in the XML transformation, you would only see the XSLT maps. Likewise, liquid action works in the similar manner. You provide the content and then you choose the map that you want to use to do the transformation. So this is a simple demo where I'm basically having a request that is an XML payload, and it has both elements and attributes. So I'm doing validation, and then in my transformation, I'm basically converting the elements as attributes so that I can process it through Liquid. Through Liquid. Now this is the local experience. We support all these capabilities in cloud as well. So you can publish what you have here, and you can either run it locally or you can publish and run it in Azure. So let me show you what the experience in Azure looks like. So now with this release, when you look at your Logic app, you're going to see a placeholder for your artifacts here as well. So here is your maps, here is your schemas. If you were doing your development from portal directly, you would add your artifacts here to be able to use them from your Logic app. Let's go to the workflow that I was showing you before. And this is what my workflow looks like. So let's trigger this workflow from, and this is the payload that I'm sending to the workflow. Just to survey. So I'm going to trigger it here from Postman, and let's do a send here. And let's look at the execution of this workflow. All right, here you go. So from execution point of view, it's pretty similar to what we support already, but I think the biggest factor here is that now you can do all of this locally without the need to connect to cloud or anything else. And secondly, and more importantly, you do not need to couple this with integration account. The dependency on integration account is not required anymore to support this. And right now we have enabled XML actions and Liquid. We have plans to bring more support to this. Flat file decode and encode is not yet available, but that is something that is planned. And if you need it, please do share with us in the chat so that we know that this is important for you. All right, so let me move on to my next demo, which is another feature that I'm very excited to share with you all because it has come up again in a lot of our conversations. It is important for anybody who's using Logic Apps and who's using not just Logic Apps, but other services in AIS as well. So in public preview, we had released the support of App Insights for this release. But what we had not enabled at that time was the support of application map. So here today I'm very excited to show you, to announce that we now support application maps also with this release, and also to demonstrate you how that experience looks like. So here I have a workflow, and it's a workflow where I've tried to showcase different type of actions. Uses a request trigger. I have a managed connector here, which is a Dropbox connector. I have a built-in action, which is a compose action. And then I'm also calling an Azure function here. And then putting this request into service bus. On the other side, I have another workflow that reads this request from the queue, that reads the data from the queue and is writing to SQL Server. And finally, in order to invoke this logic app, I'm using API management. So let me do this one more time here. All right. So let's look at the application map for this whole scenario. So here I have the application map for the workflow that I was showing you, which includes all the dependencies and correlation across these dependencies. As you can see, my request was initiated from APIM. It then went to my logic app, and then my logic app was calling function app as well as a SQL server. And here, what you're seeing as an HTTP call, HTTP node here, basically is the call that I made to the Dropbox. We have some work planned in our pipeline where you would actually be able to see Dropbox here instead of this long string. The other thing that I want to highlight here is that all the key services in the AIS show as the nodes here, the worker nodes, and then all the outgoing requests are the leaf nodes. Along with the dependency chain, you can also see the number of calls that you're making, the average time taken by average time to execute these calls. And let me also go back to more data, where now in case you have failures as supported by application map, you can also get a sense of how many calls were being successful, how many calls have failed, etc. So once again, I'm very excited to show this, to release this capability, primarily because out of all the services in AIS, I think Logic Apps was the one which was not available for application maps. So with this, now you have an ability to look at your application topology for your entire application landscape. So yeah, I'm really excited, and I look forward to your feedback. Anything else that you would like to see in terms of not just application map, but in general with respect to how you monitor your applications and what additional capabilities would you like to see when it comes to App Insights as well. Thank you. Over to you, Derek.
All right, thanks, Divya. If you can stop sharing, and we will go to the next slide and talk about how can you get involved. John, go ahead.
Yeah, let me talk about that for a second. Yeah, thanks, Derek. So, hopefully, you're as excited about these new features as we are. Some of them you've been asking for a long time, and we were really pleased to get this in your hands this week. Let us know what you think. Please try out the public preview refresh today. Try out the new mapping, try out App Insights, try out the new designer layout engine and everything else. And just give us your feedback. We prioritize based on what you tell us to prioritize on. So if there's things that you need that you don't see, then tell us and we'll figure out how to get that to you. You see all the links here to be able to do that. Send us feedback at aka.ms/LA feedback. And if you're interested in participating in upcoming user studies that we do pretty frequently, then you see Derek's handle on Twitter as well. So, please feel free to get as involved as you can, as your time permits.
All right, thanks, John. And
So
now,
over to you, Derek.
Sounds good. So with 30 minutes in, and let's look at the chat and try to answer as many questions as we can. So if you are on the live stream with us and if you have needs, feel free to post that into the chat and we will get to it.
So, Derek, I think I can take the first one here.
Go ahead, Divya.
All right. So there are a couple of questions around application map and the scope of basically the node you see there. So the node I had there was a logic app node. If you have multiple logic apps all pushing data to the same app insights workspace, you would see multiple nodes, each for a single logic app. So yes, in your application map, you can have multiple logic apps in the dependency chain. Inside the logic apps, we have workflows, and those workflows and actions are modeled as operations. So if you look into each node and you go into the details, you would see details for actions. You would see details even for built-in actions. So every action, every workflow details are available there.
Cool. Thanks, Divya. And I think I can take the next one. Inline script without integration account, any updates? And indeed, with the new logic app runtime on functions, inline action is actually built in and supported out of box. So you will not need an integration account to use that. So please give it a try and let us know what you think.
I'll take one of these from the house cat. Are we getting new connectors? Yes, soon. So we were hoping to get MQ in this refresh. We didn't quite make it. So it will be probably the beginning of next year. So just 3 or 4 weeks out from where we're at right now, we'll be adding the new MQ connector for this as well.
Cool. There's one question that just scrolled out of view on whether maps are for a single logic app or whether it can be shared. Divya, feel free to correct me. My understanding is now that you can have multiple workflow in a single logic app resource, the map is going to be for all the workflows within that logic app resource. If you have multiple of those resources that want to use the same map, then you would have to place the map in those multiple resources separately. I think there's
like as I mentioned before, the workflows are modeled as operations, and the node is per logic app. So if you want to have a node per workflow, then you would have to model that as a logic app. So you would have to put them in individual logic apps.
Let's see, I think there's a follow-up question on inline code. How about when running it on the cloud? It's the same thing. So if you use the new logic app runtime on functions, you do not need an integration account.
There are questions around what being supported with the XML today. So today what we support is XML 1.0. We do not yet support custom assemblies. All of this is planned, and in the roadmap, XML 2.0, 3.0 support is coming. Support for assemblies is also planned. If that is important for you, definitely put that in the chat so that we know that we have customers who really need this.
The next question I will take, is there a way to debug a stateless workflow?
Of the new MQ connector. Hopefully you can hear me.
Yes, we can, John.
Yeah, sorry, there's a bit of a lag. I got a feeling you're going to start talking in a second. But the MQ connector will be built in, so it will be included. It will be no additional charge. I think the MQ connector today is categorized in enterprise. We're changing that, so you'll be able to use MQ essentially included in the compute that you'll be running the workflows against.
Cool. I will take the next one. Let's see. Let's just scroll away. Let's see, where is it? The question was about whether you can debug stateless workflow. Yeah, so there is actually a flag that you can set during debugging for stateless workflow that would give you more debugging information as if it is a stateful one. We'll make sure that is included in the doc. We are also working on the UI experience so that it's just a matter of changing the toggle during debugging, so it makes it easy for you to debug your stateless workflows. All right, let's see. I think we are experiencing some network problems, so hopefully you can still hear me, even if not other members I have here with me on Teams. But while we regain a better connection, I will try to answer your questions here. Let's see. Any idea when this feature will become GA? Not yet. We're hoping for sometime next year. But really, at this point, we want to get your feedback. The reason we release this to public preview, the reason we're continue shipping new features, especially with this public preview refresh, is that we want to get the usage. We want to see people using this, so we know what are some of the gaps, what are some of the things that we should focus on in order to make sure it is ready for general availability. So your feedback will really help us in that journey towards general availability. So give it a try. Let us know your feedback either through email or on Twitter or by going to the aka.ms/LA feedback link. And we really appreciate that. All right. Let's see. What other questions do we have? Any news on network and VNet? Now, with the Logic App running on functions runtime, the network is going through the underlying resources, right? Functions and app service. So, which allows us to support features like private endpoint and all the VNet capabilities that come with it. Custom domains being another one. So. Hopefully that is what you're looking for, but if it's not, definitely let us know what are some of the gaps that you're looking for with regards to network and VNet, and we can take the feedback and triage it. right, let's see. I just want to make sure that other team members have reconnected. John, Harry, or Davia, can you hear me? Maybe not.
So there was a question on the CI/CD aspects of schemas and maps. We will have more prescriptive guidance in the upcoming sessions on this. But since it's a package deployment, you simply include the files in the package and then they would get deployed along with other artifacts.
Right. I think my chat isn't showing on the stream, but I do have it opened separately. So I would try to get your questions from there. I can see questions popping up right now. Is the preview free of charge? There's no additional cost to run Logic Apps, but you are running this on a function runtime and or app service. So that part of the compute you will have to be paying for. We will, and we're announcing the pricing as we get towards to general availability for Logic Apps. So stay tuned. I think there's a follow-up question on VNet. What about the connectors that are hosted elsewhere or on Azure? I'm guessing that's what you mean. I think this is where the custom connector extension comes in. So if you have a requirement for connectors or for services that you're connecting to work behind the VNet on premises in a disconnected way, custom connector extension would allow you to implement it in a codeful way, host it alongside with the Logic App runtime, and then it will be able to talk to all the services that you need behind the VNet or firewall.
And there was a question on how do you access the new features. So all the new features are now released and available for you to use on the portal, Azure portal directly. If you're using VS Code, you need to update your VS Code extension, and that should put the latest bit on your local development machine as well. So via new updated VS extension if using VS Code, or directly try the Logic App portal, Azure portal. There was a question around the throttling limits. I'm not clearly sure what you mean by that. If you can clarify, that would help.
Yeah, I think someone mentioned that we should be writing a blog about all the network capabilities. I agree. If you haven't noticed, if you are not following us on our Twitter handle, you may have noticed that we are getting the entire team to involved in writing more in-depth articles about the inner workings of Logic Apps. So far, we have one on the new Logic App runtime that is written by the engineering manager Rohita. We have one on building custom connector extensions from Praveen. And I think we have another one on the telemetry and App Insight integration with the new runtime. They're all posted to the Tech Community blog. We reference to it from our Twitter handle. So definitely take a look and let us know what else you want to see so we can get the team started with writing those.
There is a question if integration account will still be there for EDI. So that's something we are still figuring out, and we need your feedback as well on that. We believe that for B2B scenarios, they are not really 100% disconnected scenarios. So integration account or having some kind of connectivity to Azure seems fine there, but we would like to hear more from you if that makes sense or not. Another question was, are you going to be able to write custom logging records to App Insights? That is something that we do support, just like we support writing tracked properties to log analytics. You can use the same model, and you can have tracked properties in your Logic apps that would get pushed to App Insights.
I will take the next one in terms of throttling for certain connectors. How we're addressing it is Service Bus, for example. You may have noticed we have a new Service Bus connector that is built into the Logic App runtime with the new public preview. So that one would allow us to improve the throttling because you are not going out to connectors, but rather making the calls to Service Bus directly from within Logic Apps. So hopefully we will be looking at all the high use connectors that are experiencing throttling problems and evaluate which one makes sense to bring in to the runtime itself. But also, like I mentioned, the custom connector extension would also allow you as a customer to write some of the connectors that run alongside with the runtime for higher performance and low latency. All right, let's see, Divya, John, or Henry, Beck, or Chris, any other questions that you want to take from the audience?
I'm happy to talk about CI/CD, if you can hear my audio.
Yes, we can.
Yep, awesome. I'm hoping to get a demo up on the next session of Logic Apps Live. I think that'd be an awesome thing to show. But essentially, there's been a lot of improvements by moving to the Azure Functions runtime. You're not locked into configuring all that JSON in your ARM template itself. You can now separate out your infrastructure as code from your actual workflows itself and apply those different patterns and practices you might already be doing with functions or web apps. So we're more seamlessly fitting into your CI/CD pipelines that you might be configuring already in your organization. We are keen on feedback, so if there's anything you would like to see, if there are any pain points you have, please let me know. I will, that was the best way to send it via the usual channels of feedback, and we'll be able to incorporate that into the demo.
Cool. Let's see what else. What pattern would you recommend for implementing state machine workflow in Logic App? Well, the Logic App engine isn't a real state machine per se, but I would be interested in knowing what scenarios that you are going after with a state machine. It's something that we are thinking about and brainstorming on supporting. So it would be great to know the scenarios and we can go from there and use it as a reference. Will it be replacing the current version of Logic Apps? No, I wouldn't think them as two separate things. I think whether you are looking at the new runtime, whether you are looking at the consumption multi-tenant model, we are looking at Logic Apps. It's designed to solve your integration scenarios. We recognize that some customers will want to run Logic App in a consumption pay-as-you-go model, which will be what the G8 version of Logic App supports you. There will be some customers who want to run Logic App on a more dedicated compute and storage and have more flexibility on where to run their workflows on a container and in Kubernetes. So this is what the new runtime would allow you to do. So one isn't replacing another, and hopefully as we get towards GA, we can provide a more clear messaging both inside and outside of the Azure portal, so you don't have such confusions. Event grid support for normal service bus without premium SKU? Well, it's a better question for the event grid team that we won't unfortunately be able to answer here on this call. Any plan for event grid connector? We do have an event grid connector. Supports both triggering a Logic App. It's powered by the webhook mechanism behind the scene, as well as publishing to event grid as an action. So you can do both today. Give it a try, and if you have any trouble, let us know. All right, let's see, is there any other questions that we want to take? If we haven't got to yours, feel free to repost it. And if we missed it during the live event, once the chat are processed by YouTube, we can always go back and make sure we answer those questions should we have missed it. Okay, we'll do one last question. For on-prem workflow on Docker, stateful workflows, how will the storage be managed? So currently, you will have to talk to Azure Storage. This is where you provide the connection string while creating and managing your local project, and which in turn gets specified during deployment. We are looking into providing you the ability to choose a separate storage provider. It's something that the team started looking into as of this week. And as we get towards GA, we hope to have a better story so you can really run Logic App in a completely and fully disconnected way without any dependencies on Azure Storage. Yeah, I don't think you can post links. I think YouTube blocks it for whatever reason. But if you need to, feel free to ping me on Twitter and we can follow up from there. All right. So, like I said, we're getting close to the end of the hour. Again, I want to thank you for tuning in. We have some technical difficulty and network connectivity issues, so I appreciate you staying with us. If we missed your questions, we will go back and make sure we answer those once the chats are processed by YouTube. Usually take about a few hours, but we'll make sure to answer those once they are available. So thanks again for tuning in, and the next time we do live will most likely be in 2021. So want to wish you a happy holiday, and don't forget to try out the new Logic App release and let us know your feedback. Goodbye.